Today on the Getting Married Multiculturally podcast, I have Mahesh and Charis, better known I am Naidu from Instagram and YouTube. And welcome on the podcast. I'm so happy to have you guys here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for inviting us.
It's our pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so we are going to be talking about your multicultural blended wedding. And I forgot to say, I'm sorry, my voice is a little bit pretty bad today, actually. I'm just getting out of a cold, but I think you guys are going to be talking more than I do. So anyway.
We have a long tour, so we can use that as an excuse.
Good. So we are going to be talking about your blended Indian American wedding. Just seeing your guys' pictures and videos, I think we have a lot to talk about. I have a ton of questions. So let's start with you guys introducing yourself a little bit about where do you live now, where are you from originally, and we can start to get into how did you guys meet each other.
Okay, I'll let Charis start on the introduction part.
Okay, So we're the Naidus, and currently we're located in San Francisco. We just moved out here before our wedding. We moved out to San Francisco for his work as well as an opportunity to live in a sunshine state. It's a little bit cold this time of year, surprisingly. We both still found our sports out here. I'm still doing my equestrian vaulting, and of course she's still playing cricket, so that's the best thing in the US. There's actually cricket. We run a YouTube series since we got married. We decided, it'd be a little bit fun to teach other people as well as influence people like, hey, there's cricket, get involved around here and help them out and educate about our sport and as well as the travel. I honestly love history, and that's the biggest part that I enjoy about making the videos. I definitely like splurging on the history parts of most locations. We kind of got a good amount of Indian and American together, and also a lot of personality between our what we like to do as well as sharing. I mean, we're even planning on getting family involved because my mother-in-law, I call her mom because she much prefers considering me her daughter. She had 2 sons. So she's my mom, as we like to say. She actually was a makeup artist and did everything at our wedding. Her and my father-in-law did the makeup and hair and everything. Everything was all orchestrated mainly by her while we were out of the country.
That's amazing. It sounds like you guys have a lot in common, like you're doing everything together. You have a lot of passions and hobbies together, right? So did your passion, Charis, of loving cultures and especially Indian culture, did that come like after you met each other, or that was before? Did you have that before?
I'm big on learning a lot of new things. Even when I was in college, I'd dive into history of Russia, European, and big time on the history part, as well as I took world religions as well and learned about Cairo, Egypt, and all that kind of history classes that I could take. So I, in general, love learning. I love reading. I love learning. I grew up watching National Geographics and enjoying learning as much as I can about, especially animals. But when it came to us, before we even met, I was doing belly dancing, Middle Eastern dancing, as we like to call it more so. So it was pretty diverse. My family, I have a sister-in-law who's Ecuadorian, and it's pretty diverse. My family, we grew up in a way that it was very open house, that it's kind of like we are very accepting of a lot of ways and traditions. We grew up Christian in my family, so that is a little bit of the difference between us. Well, you grew up in Catholic school, but not Catholic religion, though.
How long have you been in the States?
Yeah, so I've been here around 6 years now. I think I just moved here in 2014 for my master's in Maryland, which is near Washington, D.C. So yeah, it was a good time. And as Charis mentioned, she and I have this common trait of liking new things and liking different cultures. And I think I always liked that right from the moment I set foot into this country. So yeah, I think that's one big common factor that brought us together.
Is that where you guys met in Washington, D.C.?
So we met at a friend's party in Washington, D.C. actually. And it was, like I said, after a year after I graduated, while I was in the whole workforce. So I was at that time ready to meet new people, and we were fortunate. I was fortunate and lucky that I met her within within the 1 year of being graduated and actually looking for, having a girlfriend at that point. So it was a pretty good, lucky incident that happened with us, I guess, with me at least.
Took a little convincing to ask him would be like, can you be my boyfriend? I remember asking him February 17th of 2017.
Yep.
So I initiated first. He was the one who first introductory, but I think I took the extra step there after a month and a half of hanging out,
Yeah.
dating.
As I said, I was pretty casual at that point. I was just wanting to go out, meet more people, and just see places and do things. But then, of course, at that point, we were dating for 3 months, and Charis asked me to be her boyfriend, and I was like, yes, why not? Let's just call it something.
Do you think that was maybe some cultural difference, like about deciding when is dating becomes a relationship and anything like that? Did you guys talk about that?
Honestly, even in my culture in India as well, I don't think many girls, it must have changed now, but I don't think many girls actually would go out and ask someone to be their boyfriend. So I definitely knew that it would be the onus would be on me to do that. I was just waiting. I don't know why I was waiting, but I was just waiting and, just taking it by the day. Whereas Charis was like, okay, I've been coming down 2 hours on weekends, driving, nights and early mornings to come see you. And my friends and my family ask, where am I going? So I want to give this the title. So I felt, yeah, she's coming from the right place, and let's actually. And I honestly did not mind at that point. And as you know, we're married now, so I definitely did not mind. We were just trying to take it easy, and we dated for about 2 years to 3 years, and then we decided to get engaged and then get married. So we got to know, the positives, the negatives, and everything, and how we could deal with it for the rest of our lives before we dived right into it. So.
It was quite a challenge though, because it was 2 years of long distance dating. I'd have to drive. I drove down every weekend and spent an entire summer watching cricket and just 8 hours of cricket, blowing the game pretty much. But it was definitely a lot of time and effort on both ends.
One thing that actually stood out and where I got bowled over in cricketing terms was when she came to my games, and my games last from like 9 in the morning to like 5, 6 in the evening sometimes. And she, without even knowing the game at that point, would come out and just sit with an umbrella, sometimes not even that, and just cheer for me. The only woman, not only the only white woman, the only woman to be on the park cheering 25 men, on the field in which I was one of the teams. And yeah, that was where I was like, okay, she's pretty serious, and I better I be serious as well, because she's definitely a catch.
That's so cool. Actually, it just reminds me of my husband. He used to play hockey, and I would just sit there and watch him play and cheer for him. And like, I just felt so proud. It was different than if we would go watch a hockey game that's just like a team, that he's not part of it. It's just a different feeling when you have your partner down there and you're just so proud.
Oh, I love when he comes to my vaulting competitions. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, so obviously another common link that was between us was this horses, right? She was directly linked to these sports, and my family historically has been related to horses back in India. And she would tell me stuff about what she did with the horses, riding wise. And eventually I ended up going to one of our vaulting events, and I was totally stunned by the acrobatics they do on a horseback. That was totally crazy. I was like, insane. This is like, you're basically having a life in danger when you're stepping on the horseback all the time like that.
Stepping, the horses go in the circle.
But yeah, I think her daredevil, her being, carrying her heart on her sleeve, that attitude was pretty much something that attracted me towards her.
It's super interesting. Like I don't know anybody who plays any of these sports that you guys do, but yeah, let's get back to your relationship and how did the proposal engagement happen? Do you have any exciting stories to share with the listeners?
Yeah, sure. As Charis mentioned, right, she proposed to me to be her boyfriend around February 2017. And throughout the year, I had my brother who visited for 6 months, and then later on, my mom visited for a couple months in mid 2018. And I had in the background been talking to my mom about Charis, about what I like about her. At that point be going out around a year and a half to 2 years, and that I potentially see that we should be engaged and in the future be married. So while my mom was coming up here from India in July of 2018, I asked her to actually make a special diamond carved a ring from India, which in India it's known for its jewelry, as some people might know. So I asked her to have that specially handcrafted from one of our family jewelers there. And yeah, so come August, she's here. I just tell Charis that, okay, my mom's here and I want you to meet her, right? She was here for a couple months. They've already met a few times. But anyway, I want her to see my university in Maryland. And I want you to come and show her around, because she'd like to talk to someone besides me, of course. And that was just me trying to create a whole facade around the whole engagement scenario.
Up in a favorite dress.
I took her. I asked her to dress up in my favorite dress of hers, which she did.
Awkward.
She asked me why.
Didn't catch on.
I was like, no, I want you to go to university because this is my place where I've studied. I just wanted to go like the it couple, so let's just do it. So we all dressed up without her knowing what's happening, and I took her to my favorite spot on the campus. It's called the M Circle. It's like a historic point in the campus where it's a giant M. M happens to be my initial. M happens to be Mary. M stands for Mary. So I found it pretty ironic. I thought to myself I should do it there. So then I asked my mom and my best friend to be there, and I just proposed to her there, and I gave her a bunch of handouts in terms of pictures, each of which meant, will you marry me? So it was Will Smith, a cartoon pointing you, marry an Indian marriage, and me was a cartoon pointing me. So it was a whole sequence of, what do you call a slideshow presentation, but in real picture in her hand. And I did that, and she still didn't get it until she saw the marry thing, which she said later on. And then, I bent on my knee and I gave her the diamond, special diamond ring, which she still wears. And
so we have that. I don't wear it for the puppy though.
Yeah. So that was our story. August 2018, my mom was here. I proposed to her, and then we had a week after that. We had like a good Indian reception sort of a thing for engagement that we do back home in India. We had like 50 odd guests. Our friends from Nashville flew out there. Different friends from different parts of the country flew out for our engagement party. Her family got, and her best friend, maid of honor, was there. So it was a good period. So August of 2018 is when I proposed her to be my wife.
Except for the only awkward tradition that we have in America that they don't do in Indian tradition. In Indian tradition, men actually wear a ring too when they're engaged. So typically he'd wear a ring on his hand. So what we did to compromise was I went out and bought a ring for him so he didn't feel left behind, but he wore it on his right hand instead, because if he wore it on this hand, people would think he's married yet. But you both wear the rings in India instead of just one person.
Oh,
yeah. So in India, engagement, the man actually wears the ring ever since the time he's engaged to show that he's engaged, and then for marriage you get a separate ring. But they're not the traditional wedding bands that like these.
Yeah.
They are another, a different kind of a ring that a man wears on his right hand sometimes. So I was just telling her, and she wasn't aware. So after 2 weeks after I proposed, she got me this ring. Like, this is your engagement ring. So I was happy.
He felt left out, so we thought we'd get him a piece of jewelry too.
Yeah, it's kind of weird when you have to say, like, you know what, I should be having a ring too.
But yeah, it worked out, and August 2018 we got engaged, and we made it formal, official, and then we knew that somewhere down the road we'd get married.
And I like that at least even while we were engaged, he'd still wear his engagement ring during his cricket matches, but he'd put it on a chain and wear it underneath his uniform when he go out on the field.
Oh, that's commitment.
I thought that was good luck.
Yeah, for good luck.
I would say after you got married, you scored several centuries, didn't you?
Actually, the luck factor definitely did count. I look back at it. My cricket performance has been really good after I got engaged and married to her.
That's awesome. So do you want to share a couple of I'm really curious to know some traditions that you guys did for the engagement party.
Yeah, so I think some of the things that come on top of my head are we exchange rings, not just the woman getting the ring. Like Charis mentioned, the man also gets the ring, so we exchange rings there. And then we exchange, had garlands, flower garlands that also we do a rose of rose pretty much. So we exchange garlands of roses. And then we also dressed Indian. And then we had a whole Indian, we actually celebrated this at an Indian restaurant. So we had an entire hall booked for us and our friends for 50 people. So we had a whole Indian, cake cutting and then ring exchange ceremony and then dinner for 50 people.
And dancing.
And dancing a little bit. So we did all of this in the span of a week. We planned and we executed. And my mom was here and she, pretty much orchestrated the entire event in the US as well for our engagement party. So it went pretty well.
Oh my gosh, that's like a whole mini wedding. That's crazy.
Every celebration for marriage in India is always a celebration. Everything's a celebration. The first year of a child's birthday they throw big festivities. So birthdays, weddings, and everything like that are very big. Everything family oriented is always like probably 10 times more so celebrated than we do in the U.S. It seems.
Wow.
Yep.
That's incredible. So I know that if I'm correct, you guys got married you had a wedding in America and also in India. Is that correct?
That's right. I'll let Charis talk about this. Since I've been doing more.
The wedding stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can go with the July wedding.
Yeah.
First. Yeah.
So the July wedding, we did the traditional Christian style. How we did it. There's a couple different ceremonies we did that were different. That even I'm like, oh, I didn't know we did this. Because in the Christian religion, it's the traditional white dress and then the walking down the aisle. We didn't get as much of a chance to do like the bridal showers and things like that. We did a mini one the day before the wedding with my bridesmaids and my maid of honor. We went to see the Lion King movie. So that was probably one thing that we could do. Mm-hmm. But it was so like we were in California and our wedding was in Pennsylvania with my family. All of my father's side of the family is in Pennsylvania. And some of my mother's side live around the rest of the state. My family's all over, from France to all over the U.S. So hard to get everybody in place. So our wedding, we did the traditional walk down the aisle, except for my maid of honor and I sung the song "A Million Dreams" from The Greatest Showman.
That was a surprise. I never expected that. I always knew that these guys are on phone calls for long hours before the wedding ceremony actually happened. And I didn't know what that was for. And it happened that both of them, she walked down the aisle and a maid of honor followed, and they sang the most beautiful song ever. It was "A Million Dreams," and everyone was awestruck. They were, shell shocked. They're like, "Who's singing?" They thought an audio cassette was playing, and then these guys walked down the aisle, and I'm just stunned. It was about 80 odd people, and it was in a beautiful church in the middle of the country. We had the whole like a farm area to ourselves, nothing but our guests, our old church decked up. And all our friends and family that actually helped us quite a bit.
Yeah, it's only my neighbors, big. We couldn't have done it without my neighbors, Jeff and Sharon, especially Sharon. She's like, we need this color, we need this. Let's get these tablecloths. Without her, like we had the color scheme down because the wedding cake was actually made. I worked in a bakery while I was in college, so my boss that became my friend over time had I had asked her if she could make our wedding cake, and it ended up being a 3-tiered wedding cake that looked like these
pillows.
Yeah, they look like I don't want to say Asian style pillows, but I guess that's the best way to explain it. With a little golden trim and then a little golden elephant on top, because a golden elephant in India represents is a symbol of good luck. So we had that on top of our wedding cake. And the one thing that I did differently for our U.S. wedding was I said, I'm going to wear a choli and langa instead of my white wedding dress to the reception. So that was the one thing we did differently for our wedding, so I could have a little bit of fun and mix up our game a little bit with the wedding.
So she got a wedding dress and the choli and lenga, which is Indian traditional for wedding dress, whereas I was walking around all in my suit, only one pair of clothing, poor man.
But you had nice suspenders.
Yeah.
And the bow
but yeah, I mean, like she mentioned, all our friends who were there in Pennsylvania, Jeff and Sharon and Corinne and everyone else helped us out really well. Pastor Steve, all of them are local Lancaster people who lived there for most of their lives.
Pastor Steve is a longtime minister in my family. He probably baptized me when I was a child in the church. So my family had been there since then. There's 4 kids in my family. I'm the youngest. So for him to do that, I think that was kind of fun, especially in the wedding. I'll probably have to post the video where we had a jewelry case that my original ring had come in, and we used it for the ceremony to open the box. It has lights when you open it up. So the minister's like, this thing has lights. So I'll have to find that clip. But we have a really funny clip of him opening. He's like, I've never given rings in a box that had lights.
Yeah. He was shocked. And he didn't know that came from India. He was like, how on earth did they put a light inside a ring box? So he was pretty shocked. But he has a pretty good humor, and he did the entire ceremony pretty smooth. He used to, call us on a weekly basis for months and to plan this event. The
pre-wedding counseling that most couples go through before you get married. We did that, but we mainly called him. We had like 3 sessions before he moved to California. And then we did like phone calls. I think was it every week or every few weeks?
Every week, yep.
So yeah, it's kind of a thing that usually traditional couples in a church usually you'll go through marriage counseling in a way. So we had that with him, and it was nice to have my old-time minister.
Oh wow! So I'm curious, what made you decide to do 2 weddings? What was the reason for that? Just if other couples are trying to give them some advice of like, I can't really decide if we should do two or one, or separate or blend them together. So it seems like you guys didn't. Well, you did blend some traditions together in one day, but you did two completely separate weddings.
Yeah, I think I would like to speak about why I wanted the American wedding. Charis wouldn't care less if she didn't have an American wedding because she's seen it whole of her life. But on the other side, I've seen the American weddings on television and some of my friends getting married here. So I was like, no, even I don't care if I don't have an Indian wedding, but I want an American wedding. So basically, we married in our own culture, in each of our cultures for the other person. She married in the Indian culture because she wanted it. I married in the American
culture. That's so cool.
Yeah. I didn't realize how long the Indian weddings. Once we get to explaining that, I'll explain why it's called functions. They call it a function instead of an event. But I think, I was gunning. I'm like, hey, let's just go to India and get married and everything. But it's a lot easier to go the route to actually get married in the U.S. legally, because if somebody's on a visa, you can actually jeopardize by marrying in another country. And we were like, you know what? Let's not have to deal with all that mess. And let's get married before.
I think part of it is also I wanted the American wedding for sure. But even if we didn't have that, we would have legally gotten married with the court and had the whole court marriage license and all of that formulated even before we had the Indian wedding. Because as Charis mentioned, it's easier to get married here and have your spouse visa in the process or already in your hand before you go back to your home country if it's not the United States and get married there. Because if you get married there, those legal documents and the process to get legalized in the United States takes longer than it would if you got married here and stayed here for some time. So that's another thing that we researched. And in any case, we wanted to do an American wedding. So either did the Indian first or the American first. It didn't matter at that point. So keeping the legality of the whole process in mind, we said, let's just do it. Also seeing on the East Coast, the summers are the best time. And in India, we are blessed with good weather year round. So we were like, okay, let's do it in the summer here. Let's do it in the winter there. It falls with the temperature that we like, as well as, our legal criteria that has to be sorted before we could fly to India and get married there.
A lot easier on all that. And plus, a lot of my family's in Pennsylvania. So to make sure, my father walked me down the aisle. The last part after the singing, he gave me away. We did the traditional father gives the daughter away. We did something, they have a similarity in the Hindu style ceremony is the same thing. But of course, my family couldn't fly over.
Yeah, also a big part of that, as Charis mentioned, is we couldn't have all of 50 to 100 of Charis's people fly back with us to India. So we thought it'd be better to get that done first. So, everything's settled. It's all good here. I get to meet their family since I'm in the US anyway. And, we get to have those interactions before getting married and coming back here and then trying to have a ceremony here. But definitely do both.
It's totally worth it, because to experience such a thing, it's one thing to go to, I'd say, I probably would have been very happy even going to somebody else's wedding in India and experiencing it. But to be the bride and be going around and meeting the entire family and experiencing it from first point of view, probably once in a lifetime. Because, we're probably not going to have another wedding in India again. People's weddings. But the family has just as much fun as the bride and groom. There's a few more responsibilities.
I think that's a good segue to go into the Indian wedding, which was your next point, I believe.
Yep, that's true. That's true. And I love that you guys have decided to do the Indian wedding regardless of already being married on paper, sort of say. Especially because Indian weddings are just so grand.
Theatrical too.
Yeah, theatrical and multiple days and just so beautiful. And you're right, it's take advantage of that, right? If you have that opportunity.
So when it comes to getting married in India and the USA, at least in our case, are two countries that we are related to. You should definitely look into planning this out when it comes to budget, because this is going to cost you a lot, especially if you had like a 5-day elaborate Indian wedding that we did, and then like a 1-day wedding reception that we had here for about 100 guests, renting out the entire facility. I think if you're good on your budget planning and you have your people who can work with you through these things, I think it is the best. Which luckily enough, my mother and my family in India were there to support me in India, and Charis's friends and family in the US were here to support us with just the planning aspect. That took care of a lot of burden, off our shoulders. So if anyone's looking forward to that, that's the best way to go.
So how was the wedding planning Charis, did you know much about traditions and what are you supposed to do? What are you supposed to have or make, or how was that? Did you do your research online, or you're just asking? Um,
Mother-in-law too.
She did ask me and my mom and every Indian person that she knows at her work or is fine.
As soon as I walked in I used to work for a bank, so I worked in the back office. And as soon as I wore an Indian dress, the first dress he gave me for our 1-year anniversary, he gave me, I'd walk into the office, and as soon as somebody would be like, "Oh, Indian dress," they're like, people would start talking a little bit more open with me, and I'm like, yeah, I was always excited to talk with others, especially some of my coworkers there, and ask questions, because some of my friends came from India. So I'm like, what was it like? What did you guys do? And they're like, oh, you have to remember to steal the shoes from the groom at the ceremony and hold it ransom. And that is actually something that was probably forgotten at this point, unfortunately, because we got so wrapped up with the wedding that I'm like, I forgot to ask my maid of honor to steal your shoes.
Was there something that you didn't want to do, or you couldn't?
We actually did everything that a Hindu traditional religious wedding. Even in the ceremony, we had somebody speaking, I don't know what language, but he didn't even understand half of it.
So most of our prayers are done in the language of Sanskrit, which is like the origin of most Indian languages, I'd say. And it's not a common tongue to speak that language. It's like Old English, where not many people speak Old English, but it's like the base of the real, the current English. It's something similar to that if you compare Sanskrit to our Indian languages. Anyway, so we had this whole 5-day event being planned and executed, and we started planning of this. I think while we started planning for the American wedding, in the back part, we also had the plans for India going on.
He was probably a little bit jealous that I put out 7 or 8 different outfits.
She had 2 outfits for America, which is okay, but in India for about 5 days she had about 8 to 10 outfits to wear, and I was like, why are you getting all of this? This is not even your home country. This is my country. And yeah, I was very jealous when we got married. But marriages in India are mostly going towards making women happy, I believe now.
Well, in the U.S., I'd probably say that's also a thing, because most people are like, women always dream of their wedding since they're little kids, so they have like everything fine. And I think that's why the term bridezilla is mainly applied to weddings. I've never heard of a groomzilla, so the woman wants to be showed off. But of course, in India, it's like there's more equality for everything that we do is like, hey, the groom's involved, the bride's involved, photo shoots, all like everything is more geared towards inclusive.
Yep.
That's a good point. That's good to know. How did the wedding days, or not day, wedding week or weeks, how did that play out? You planned out which day you're going to get married. You probably scheduled some venues or something, and then you packed up and left and arrived to India. How was that?
Yeah.
We arrived a few days before the actual wedding, so there were fittings that needed to be done. Okay. So we're on the back of a bike.
So we left from here on Christmas, right? Our wedding date was decided to be 1st of January 2020 because we wanted the date 1/1/2020. I was pretty adamant about that. Anyway, and we started working backwards from there, right? And we had this 5-day event that we wanted to have. So one of the first days that we got there, and it was 2 days after we reached there, was we had a pre-wedding bridal and groom shoot. We had like an entire day of photo shoot, only done for us in like 3 different set of changes. So we'd started at around 8-9 a.m. and we ended up until sunset, which is 6-7 p.m. in India. So we did the entire 8 to 10 hours of shoot of different changes between us. We took thousands of pictures with professional cameras and multiple cameramen. So that happened on the 26th, I believe. And then on the 27th, we had the church wedding. My mom's Christian in India, so she gets a Christian wedding here in her in church, and then my mom wanted to do a Christian wedding for me, her eldest son there. So we had like a 500-person reception, lunch offering, and a Christian church blessing there, where again we had a lot of pictures and videos and a whole ceremony done for about 4 to 5 hours.
So you both of you had your own photo shoots in separate locations on that one day. Is that what you're saying?
No, so we had them together in like different locations. We went to my high school, the place where I went to school. It's got a beautiful church, and there we also have a 150-year-old garden called Empress Garden. We went there to do a big photo shoot among all the flowers and the beauty of the garden there. So that was on the 26th. 27th was the church wedding where we had 500 odd guests, a lot of blessings in my mom's home church. And then 28th is what Charis was just about to explain before I cut her off. It's called Mehendi and Haldi. And I'll let her speak because she's very enthusiastic about that topic.
Because we did it differently. We didn't exactly. Mehendi and Haldi are often together in a way. So we kind of did it a little differently because Mehendi takes hours for it to dry.
So Mehendi is henna, by the way.
Yeah,
it's the tattoos, the temporary tattoos that women get done.
So it takes hours for it to dry. So his mom planned instead, because we have the entire wedding party that needed to be done too, and it was probably like 10 or so plus people. We had the Mehendi artist come into the house the night before we were actually going to hold Haldis. So we did all the henna all the way up to past the elbows, did it on the feet, and they did the bride and groom on my hands, and then he got his hands done too, and he played a scavenger hunt on his. He had my name mixed in there, like, find it, and like.
Yeah, so that's a game in Hindu tradition, the day of Mehendi, henna as we call it. The bride is supposed to find her name, which is like done on temporary tattoo henna on the groom's hand. So it's her job to find all the letters which are scrambled around the hand. So I did that trick with her, and she was able to find all her letters in my hand. It's pretty tough. It's not as easy as it sounds because it's a lot of work being done around that to try and navigate to your letters. But she did a good job.
I think the Mehendi for the guys is a lot easier because for the women, it's like, okay, you put your arm here, then you got to twist it sideways, and you got to stay there for a amount of time while the Mehendi artists are working on it. So I think that was about a 6-hour process after it was like drying in between. And then, of course, they're like, oh, make sure to rub lemon on it before it comes off and stuff, because then it'll make it redder, because you definitely want the Mehendi to be as red as can be. And I think there's a saying that he taught me that the redder it is on the hand, the more in love that person is.
The more true your love is for your partner.
There we go. That's what it was.
So basically the saying is, and I don't know if I'm quoting this right, but the darker the Mehendi turns out to be the following day, and the longer it lasts, it shows the amount of love you have for your partner. So hers lasted for months, which I'm happy about. And as she mentioned, she sat there like night. We started at 10 p.m. or something, and then it went on until like 2-3 a.m. She was there sitting with her hands twisted in different angles, drying the
feet up
Mehendi.
and all set, and I was dressed in a choli and langa too for the photos that were going on.
Yeah. By the way, all of these days have thousands of pictures taken and multiple photographers covering these events, so she had to be prepared for that.
Oh yeah, we forgot the is it what they were doing before the wedding? We went to the houses and they were doing the fruitful stuff.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Before and after.
Yeah. So before the Mehendi, good thing Charis mentioned this is in India there's a tradition, at least in Hindu tradition, that the bride and groom get invited to family relatives' houses, and they give you offering in terms of clothing and some fruits and vegetables and some things which basically help you succeed in life or is a good sign.
Yeah.
There's different beliefs to that. I wouldn't dive deeper into the religion because I'm not sure about those aspects. But it's meant to be good luck, and it's meant to be fulfilling and a prosperous future ahead. So we went to like 3 or 4 different cousins and neighbors and friends and family invited us for dinners. We just went there for dinners, but they gave us these offerings, and then we got to know that this is traditional and customary.
That's a very important part of the weddings, especially because they're draping the rice on your head, shoulders, and your knees each time in a certain amount of ways that they'll do it. And each house is different, but each house would present fruit to you. So it's kind of providing to the bride, saying, be fruitful in your marriage and in carrying on for children. So they put that in your lap when you had a scarf draped over your head, or a dupatta, depends on what they give you.
Yeah, so all of this was even before the main events, right? She's just talking about Mehendi, which was day 3, and we got the whole Mehendi done. She sat there for 8 hours in the night. The following day, we had the Haldi, which is the turmeric. If people follow us on Instagram, on I Am Naidu, they can see all the yellow stuff, which looks like paint. But no, it's one of the spices that's used for cooking food, actually. So that's used again to purify the bride and the groom, I believe, if I'm not wrong, in the Hindu tradition. And we have an 8-hour evening ceremony for about 200 odd guests in our houses to celebrate. People get these spices and this turmeric from their households and apply it to the bride and groom, give them clothing, give them gold, give them silver, give them gifts. So this is just day 4 that we are in, and we had 200 people giving us food, giving us gifts. and Charis didn't know anything. She had lost
I
count
knew
of how
about
much
the
calories
snack.
she had eaten, and it was a beautiful time. And we were all smudged in yellow and dancing the night off and having henna and mehndi done, and it was beautiful. Just
The dancing
4.
was probably the funnest part. So that process lasted several hours because people come and go. So you'll have a big majority party that'll stay the entire time, and then you'll have people dropping in here and there. So there were times where we walk off and maybe go get food, and it's like, oh, you need to get back on the stage. There, so and so has arrived. We need you to be up there so they can do the turmeric on you too. So we had a couple of occasions like that. But I think the dancing was the fun part. The kids had a blast towards the end when the music's pumping. You have little kids running up, dipping their hands into the bowl, and that had turmeric because they're all going smearing it on each other too. So by the end of, I think there's a reason why most of the women wear the yellow for the event, and the men wear white, so it stains them a little bit more. But traditionally, men wear white, the women wear yellow, and it makes sense because by the end of it, everybody
You're
had
all
it.
yellow. You're all yellow.
I went to my brother-in-law and pat him on the back when I had turmeric on my hand as a joke, just to leave a good imprint on his back.
So this is for us, but what we do for the guests is every guest who comes in, all the ladies, they also get henna done. So it's not just the bride and the groom getting this done. Everyone in the close family gets like a lot of detailing done. But even the general audience, public who've come to your ceremony of haldi and mehndi, they also can get mehndi done, the henna done from artists that you provide them as a good faith of them coming and showing up to your events, and as a sign of them being close to you, family and friends bonding. And they also get bangles. So the bangles that Charis is wearing, not as great as these ones, but they get green and red ones, mostly green. All women get to have green bangles. So they get bangles and they get henna done. Every guest gets this. And this is from the brides, or rather the grooms, in our case, side, that we offer this to every guest. So here's where the costs add up, by the way. But anyway, this is a part of the Indian culture as well, where we do stuff for the guests. We offer them food. We have music playing and drinks are being offered, and they get henna done, and they also have bangles offered. So everybody goes back with something and is happy.
And some clothing too. Some of we also bought gifts from some of the guests. So you're also my mother-in-law was also handing out some gifts before they came up to us as well. But it was really fun.
Yeah, along with that close family, we did it for about 100 people, men and women included. We gifted them saris, and for men, we gifted them traditional Indian clothing. This is again something that every household in India traditionally does. When the eldest son of the house gets married, every family and friend that you know that is close to you gets something from them, as a good sign of good faith, and as welcoming a gift to them. So we did this for about 100 odd people, probably more if I'm not wrong, and we gave everybody saris and Indian, salwar and kurtas for guys. And my mom took care of all of this from like 6 to 8 months of preparation for these 5 days. So she did all of this planned 6 months before and got dresses for each of them, matching their size and color preference, and all of this for about 100 people over 6 months. Most of these people I don't even interact on a day-to-day basis, but I'm almost about her picking for them.
Even neighbors are like close family. You won't even know half the time. That's like that's why the term auntie and uncle comes very in handy in India, because unlike in the US where like, oh, uncle is my father's brother, in India, uncle and auntie are terms of respect that you will often say to somebody on the street, mainly people who are older than you, to show respect, because it's just a traditional thing. So anybody who comes is like, the best way, if you don't know their name exactly, auntie and uncle always comes in handy.
Good tip.
Yeah, a lot of clothing being given away, a lot of colors being smudged, a lot of turmeric and music and dance and food. So this was just day 4, which was haldi and henna. And then on day 5, which was the 31st of December, we had the Bharat. Bharat is a procession, and Charis can talk about it. Yeah.
So tradition was to ride in on a white horse. So that's kind of fun. It's like that's the parade of men coming to the bridal party of like, hey, I'm here. But we did it a little bit differently. He surprised me. He and Mom played a trick on me. They said, oh, we're getting this float. I'm like, a float? We're getting floats? We're getting a float?
By float, she means
parade float.
Parade float of horses which are made out of cardboards or paper or plastic. She didn't know that at that point we were getting real horses, because my mom and I had wanted this to be a surprise for her. Knowing all of her horse connection, we just wanted to tell her that no, we are saving money. We don't want to get real horses. We are getting floats. which are on wheels. So she was disappointed when she knew that, but still excited. Wait until she tells you about when she saw the real deal.
Yeah, because traditionally it's like, okay, we'll spare the animals from the loud noise, but I will say, justify the actual barrage itself, then I'll explain. When I got out of the car, I'm like, there is a chariot that's lit up with 2 Mawari horses. So Mawari horses are actually the breed that are native to India. They're well known. They're a bit small in size. I'd probably compare them to an Arabian horse size. They're not quite quarter horse, but if you're a horse person, you understand the sizes. But they're medium sized, not quite pony, and they are soft and their ears curl. So they're beautiful horses with different markings, mostly seen in white, gray, technically, if you want to be technical. But we had the 2-horse-drawn carriage, and I was literally in the carriage trying not to cry because I was so excited.
She didn't try hard enough. She was actually crying. She was in tears. And I thought actually that she was because she was in love with me that much, but no. She was surprised and she was
happy.
So, blown away that she was like, I got real horses, 2 white, gorgeous horses to draw a carriage, which is totally lit up. It's beautiful sunset time. You have 100 people dancing in front of you to live music. Everybody who's driving down. So in India, this is Bharat, which I wanted to explain. Bharat is a procession where the bride and the groom, typically mostly the groom, but we did the bride and the groom sit in a chariot or ride a horse, and they have all the the groom's party, which is about 100 to 200 people dancing down the street for about a mile at least, with live music and live band. And this is like in traffic, right? We don't care for traffic there because traffic. We have people who
around you.
people who manage for traffic, but you pay people to do that for you, or you have to get permits to have traffic cops do that for you. Anyway, we got all that worked out. We had this mile-long stretch that we had to cover. 2 beautiful white horses, me and Charis in our beautiful Indian traditional clothing on a well-lit chariot, and about 100 people with live music and band dancing for about a mile. And she was in tears for half of that journey. I
at least did not ruin my makeup, because the makeup job takes a good amount of time for that type of work, especially for the photo shoot you do before you get in the barrage. But I think to justify, because I know some people are like, some people nowadays aim to not have animals in the wedding because of the factor, it's loud, it's scary for the horses, or sometimes they have elephants and camels, but we had the traditional horses. Honestly, to justify that, the music is actually in front of the carriages. They have the procession in front of all the carriages, so the horses are behind all the speakers. And the things for the horses are, they don't really walk very much. Even if it's a mile, it'll take over an hour. So for
a mile covered over an hour, she said, is an hour, but over 2 hours sometimes. So basically a horse is walking, stopping, and it always has like 1 or 2 people who manage the horse. Yeah. So it's not as bad as it sounds sometimes, that horses being drawn and on the streets loud music. It's that it's well taken care of horses which are bred to do this and have done this their entire lives, and they're trained to do this.
Desensitized to the situation. Yeah. I've worked around horses long enough, so it's kind of the situation that you put them in. Even where I come from, we had horses in Gettysburg that were used to cannons.
So this was like day 4, I think, December 31st evening. We are having this procession. So Bharat eventually leads to the Sangeet. Sangeet, which in literal terms in English means music or music actually. So the evening of Sangeet in Indian Hindu tradition at least is an evening only for singing and dancing, of skit playing, of all the fun and of all the events happening around the wedding. So this event is only for the evening, starts about 6 p.m., ends until midnight, where all the family and friends will prepare dance sequences, singing sequences, or little plays, or there'll be a slideshow of your history of your dating or history of your growth from your childhood, everything being played. Mm-hmm. So we have this at a very good 4-star hotel, which we had booked for both our wedding and our reception party, as well as the Bharat. And we had about 300 odd people show up that evening. And my mom had and again, one more surprise to me and her, we didn't know that about 50 of my relatives were actually planning different dance sequences for our wedding. So we go up there, and we have these 50 odd people of my friends and family, mostly close family, dancing solo dances, couple dances, mixed dances, group dances. So we had about 10 to 15 dances. Kids as young as 2-year-old to old people as much as 60-year-olds dancing for us for about 15 to different songs throughout the night. And then, my mom had a special dance for us, and it was a beautiful day.
With chinamas. So chinama in Hindi actually means little mother. So we call his aunts chinama. We don't call them by the traditional way that most people call them in Hindi as an aunt. We call them chinamas because they were around his entire life. So chinama.
So Chinama is a little mother. So basically, my Chinamas and my mother, all of them put together, who helped raise me, like she said, put together a different dance sequence and sort of a history, run through the history of how I was while I was a kid, and they also gave speeches, and it was a very endearing moment. And I think I had a few tears in my eyes that day, seeing all my brothers and sisters, family and mother and aunts dance. And we also had a special surprise for them. We also had been choreographing and dancing here in California, practicing for the event. So we had 2 different dances and a song that we wanted to sing, and everybody was stunned that when they stunned us, we stunned them too. So it was a very good evening.
The best part about the song that we chose, I thought it was quite fitting, even though he's like, I don't know this song. I hardly know Disney. He doesn't care for Disney as much as I do. So I chose something that I'm like, well, it seemed suiting for a whole new world. So we sang a whole new world, except he had to learn the English part, and I learned the Hindi version of it. And it was like, because in Hindi, it's Naya Jaha Jamil Fiza Ye Kahe Kasha. That's
so it's basically the whole new world, which is Aladdin, the movie, its title song. And I sang the English part. She actually rehearsed and practiced the Hindi parts. And
well, we did, the 2 dances, we formulated the dances to include an American style and Bollywood styles. So we kind of did that for both our acts, for both the songs. So we mixed it up a little bit so we can learn some Bollywood.
Yeah, so this went on for 6 hours, a lot of food, a lot of dancing, a lot of singing, a lot of people, and a lot of gifts again. So we did this for the day prior to the wedding, and this is just day 4. And anything else you want to add before we wrap up the day 4?
I think you could. Because everybody was singing and dancing, and that went on. Most Indian weddings last until, I don't know, like 3 in the morning.
Yep.
Indian days start later than most days than in the U.S. where we start at 8. No, they start 10, 11, 12 o'clock in the morning is their morning time.
So that was that, and I think we should move on to the final event, which was the final day of our wedding, the big day, the big event. We had a wedding ceremony on the 1st of January. Early morning, a traditional Hindu South Indian wedding, where we had our priest, our pandit as we call it. He was there, one of our family pandits, and he gave all those blessings and his the scripts that he read were in Sanskrit and from our holy books. And this went on for a couple hours, and he was actually kind enough to give me time to interpret these Sanskrit and Hindi things to her in English. And he had a pretty good sense of humor as well, and he was pretty patient with me because I couldn't real-time transfer and interpret most of those things. So we did that. It was a 2-hour wedding ceremony with entire walking around the fire pit and tying the knot between the bride and the groom, and then they walk 7 times. Each of the walks is significant for some religious aspect of Hinduism. Also, my uncle and aunt, who's like the godfather of my family, he acted to be the bride's father, and his wife acted to be the bride's mother. So they gave her away in Hindu customs, and they were pretty emotional. Being my uncle and aunt, they were like, "Oh, we always wanted to give someone away. They didn't have a daughter; they have 2 grown-up sons." So they were like, "This was like a dream come true. Thank you very much." They gave her away. My mom was all teary-eyed, and yeah, we had a 2-hour beautiful ceremony. All the pictures and videos of which people can see on I Am Naidu YouTube and Instagram. And Charis, what was your point of view on that?
I think that the games in it that are traditional, there's different styles of games that they'll do in between the bride and the groom. And one of the ones was to dump rice on each other's heads as fast as you could. So you were trying to get more rice on the other person than yourself. So you're dumping it. And then the other one was you take the wedding rings and we put them in a bowl of water that had rose petals in it. And Uncle decided to throw in a few coins in there to trick us. So that game is to specify saying, hey, whoever finds the ring the most is going to be probably the more dominant in the marriage. So that ended up being a tie because the first time I found the coins, he found the ring the second time, and then I found it the last time. I'm like, aha, I'm sure there's a picture of that somewhere.
Yeah, so they made it pretty interesting. I actually found it very interesting and that is something that, if someone who's not Indian and who's married to a Hindu, they should definitely do this, because as a Hindu myself, I was like amazed by how funny that and how interesting that whole marriage event could be. It's not dull as most people think. Just you just have to sit through 6 hours of hearing chants. It's actually pretty interesting. These days they've ramped it up to make it pretty quick and make it interesting for both parties. The bride and the groom. And I actually loved it. I didn't want it to end at some point. I was like, keep this going for the entire day. I want to keep playing these games and having these old wedding ceremony events being happening.
It was a good view too on top of the hotel, so we had a good spot up there. But I think it was rather amusing because so during the ceremony, the woman traditionally in Hindu tradition, women don't wear rings showing they're married. We will wear a necklace instead. Also Mangalsutra.
Yep.
So you wear this as a symbol of marriage. They also wear toe rings too. That's a traditional thing as well. That gets a little hard here in America since most of the time I'm wearing sneakers or my heels or something to go to work. So this was actually, the priests will, what they do with the Mangalsutra, they'll actually put turmeric smearing on it, some red curry powder as well, and then oil. Yeah. So each one in its own way symbolizes something. You also do that on the heads too.
Yeah, so that morning, that is actually like the ring exchange ceremony that happens in America, which is like when you're actually married. That in India, that is the actual marriage, when a man actually ties the Mangalsutra on the woman's neck, and he puts the toe rings on the woman's toes. In south of India, at least, that's how, when they are actually legally and religiously married. And so she got her beautiful necklace, her beautiful toe rings to go along with her other rings and more jewelry for her, and I was more jealous, but she got all of it that morning.
But the one thing that's definitely different compared to religious aspects, especially cultural, because in India they have a kind of policy of no PDA in public. So even holding hands is probably about the extent that you can do, and you'll still get stared at. And of course, I got more stares because I'm a foreigner in his hometown. So I got definitely a lot of stares if I was hanging around with him or trying to hold hands. There's a legend, and I think I mentioned on my Instagram post, I'm just forgetting the name of the goddess that it's supposed to represent. She was very loyal. Yes. She was very loyal to her husband. So it's said that during the wedding, so after the wedding ceremony, there is a star, and some legends say two, that only the couple can see during the daylight. So it's said that the bride's groom will go and say, try to tell the bride, hey, look to the sky. Do you see this? And then the bride will point out, yes, I see the star. So that's kind of a tradition as well.
Yeah, so basically just the bride and the groom, after they're married in traditional fashion, they get to see the stars and no one else could see them. So there's a traditional picture of where she's pointing towards the star and I'm holding her head and showing her the star. That's a traditional South Indian picture that they do. And ideally, both of you should see the star and no one else sees those stars. I think we saw that day.
And I still forgot to steal your shoes.
The bridesmaids and the bride get to steal the groom's shoe, and then they get to get ransom on it, so they can ask as much as money or whatever they want in return. So luckily for me, they forgot to do that because they were so overwhelmed with the rest of the stuff that they skipped that.
That's because photo shoots in India, normally a photo shoot, okay, here's a few photos. Photo shoots there, it's hundreds to thousands of photos. You'll spend hours before your actual ceremonies or anything when you're all dressed up to get photo shoots done.
Yeah, so before every event, there'll be a 2-hour photo shoot, right? So every event is happening after a 2-hour photo shoot being done. So that was the wedding. And then finally, the final icing on the cake was the reception ceremony. We had about 700 people invited there. We had food, dinner for all our guests. This was like the final deal, and we got all the gifts, all the cool pictures taken. That's actually when we also started feeling tired, and we also wanted to eat. And we had a giant sports arena style screen which showed all our pre-wedding pictures. So all the pictures that were taken 4 days prior to the wedding day were all showcased there in the slideshow, which we also couldn't see, and we were like, "Whoa, that's beautiful! I've never seen the picture of mine."
They're like, okay, you guys sit up there, all the audience just sees you. So we're like, but we want to see that too. But everybody's walking up to greet us. They're kind of like, congratulations, and saying we're happy for you. So there's a custom, even in, not really custom, it's just kind of the way it is as well in India. The men won't often shake hands with the woman. They just don't. It's kind of like, it's more of like they'll do like namaste to the woman versus like embracing and things like that. Would you say it's a cultural aspect?
Yeah, I think it's a cultural
in a cultural thing.
In general, most people, men to women or women to men, would say namaste. It's okay for the same gender to shake hands or say hi and hello and hug. I think it's just a cultural thing. I think in India. Yeah.
US, you shake hands with almost everybody you meet when you say hello.
So anyway, while that was happening, we were getting a lot of gifts. A slideshow was being presented. People were eating food while we were, mostly, as she said, showcased on the stage and waiting for pictures. So we were just tired at some point around 10, 11 when our function, as we call our events, ended. We got to have our dinner and finally go back to our hotel room.
That is one of the top things that I will say. If you have a Hindu or Indian traditional style wedding, make sure to eat something before you go to the ceremony. I honestly, as a woman, it's like, I don't want to drink a lot of water and eat too much because I don't want to look bloated in my photos. So, but you definitely want to have something on hand because you're not going to eat until everybody else has eaten. The bride and the groom are the last of the wedding party to eat at the function, even if it's 1 o'clock in the morning.
Which more often than not it is. Yeah, so that was a 5-day wedding ceremony that we wrapped up, and it seemed like a month, but it was just 5 days. And pictures and videos, there were about 80 gigabytes of pictures and videos taken. To put that into perspective, there was about 25,000 pictures and about 2,000 videos that were recorded over these 5 days. Yeah, so we had a lot of sorting through to do after that to just bring out our wedding album, and which we're still working over.
This is just so beautiful. It's something that really, if you don't experience it, you would never really understand the richness of this type of wedding. And I really enjoyed listening all these days that you guys shared, and thank you for sharing them so detailed. Now that you think back to your wedding days, what is that sticks out to you? Like, which one is each of your favorite moment or tradition?
Sure, I'll let her go first.
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I think out of all the weddings that we had, of course, the Hindu wedding was probably my absolute favorite because there's so much more. I feel like there's so much more meaning behind it because it's not my own culture and I'm learning as I go with everything. Even though I knew so much about it, there was always these newer, smaller things involved, like the going to people's houses. Even after the wedding, you still go to people's houses. You're supposed to visit everybody that you possibly can. And we were there for like almost a month. But I think the Sangeet was probably my favorite because it was fun to sing and dance and then watch everybody else perform. Like his cousins, even the littlest of cousins, all these kids learn Bollywood dancing since they're little. So by the time they're older, they're going to be fabulous dancers. And they're all really cute when they're that little dancing on stage too.
I think I'll break it down to two small things. One is we surprised her with a camel for our Haldi event, which she didn't mention. So my mom, now that she knows her love for animals, she got her camel. Again, well-treated, properly trained, camel made for only events like this. We got a camel for her. We had the camel for half a day, which we did beautiful photo shoots with. We had a camel ride too. We rode around the camel, around the neighborhood we lived. So that was one highlight that I've not seen many other weddings do, honestly. The second was the Indian wedding ceremony itself in the morning. I was amazed by how smooth it was and how quick it felt, even though it was 2-3 hours. And I just enjoyed and relished the entire 2-3 hours. I can actually just sit and watch the video over and over again because each of
trailer,
as she said, each of those things actually mean a lot deep when it goes to culture and religion. But they're also so much more fun, even if you don't know the cultural aspect of it. You just want to be a part of that and enjoy it. So definitely highly recommend it. If you're Hindu or Indian and you want to do Indian cultural wedding, don't skip it. Definitely do it. You'll enjoy it more than you ever imagined.
I will say this. I think I'm looking forward to also being a guest at weddings because as a groom, everything goes by so quickly. You don't even realize the time's flying. It's like you're up there, and it's like, oh, we get to have food now. Oh, it's over, and it's like it's just it just goes by too fast. So, but I think the guests definitely they probably have a really good side. I mean, we had a great time, but I think as a guest even, that's going to be fun when we start going to some of the relatives' weddings coming up too.
Oh, that sounds super exciting. You had an awesome event if you're like, oh, I forgot about the camel. That's something
I feel like after this call is done, after this video is done, that I forgot about many things, which she'll remind me.
There's so much that goes into everything. Like probably even the draping, like in some of our videos, I don't know, like they hold a drape between the bride and the groom at the ceremony even before they can, they'll see each other before that, but they'll put the drape up in between them as what does that symbolize?
I don't know. It's actually something to do with some cultural or Hindu religious thing. But again, for a brief moment, for a few minutes, between the bride and the groom will be a big drape. They both can't see each other, and the priest would be doing his chants, his religious chants, and after some time, the bride on her forehead gets something from the groom's forearms, and he pastes that thing on her forehead, and that's another part of the ceremony. All these things, all of this, I actually did not know, honestly, being an Indian and Hindu as well. Like I said, it's an eye-opener. It's a fun experience. It's something that an Hindu or an Indian in general should definitely do. Do a cultural Indian wedding. It'll open your eyes to how beautiful your culture is.
Be prepared for haldi, even if you're a guest or the bride or groom of the wedding. You're going to be finding turmeric smudges on your pillow probably for a few days, even after trying to wash it off. It really does, but if you scrub enough, you can usually get it off. And I managed not to have the yellow tint the next day.
Well, I really love how much you are enjoying, Charis, to embrace this culture, and I can tell how much you guys love the culture and enjoyed your day. It's just so fun to listen.
Yep.
So before we wrap up, because we've been here for a long time, but and like you said, it's probably much more to share. So how can listeners find you if they want to see some photos or chat or ask more questions?
So of course we run our I Am Naidu channel, which is based off of just I Am Naidu. That's just kind of how it came out. So we actually started the YouTube series, and we actually do explanations of culture differences as well as cricket and the wedding. We will be doing more travel vlogs on India, but we will have more on the wedding there, especially the videos the videographers are putting together. So it'll be almost like a mini documentary up to.
So all the good stuff that we discussed here, at least for the wedding and the Indian culture, you can go to YouTube and hit I Am Naidu. We are the only channel which is called I Am Naidu there, and you'll see all our cultural, social, our travels, our sports, our cooking, all of that, but mostly focused around the wedding because we recently had our wedding completed and we're getting all the data now. And then after that, our second most important channel or medium of communication is
Instagram. So that's the I Am Naidu 007 with underscores in there. But we also have the Facebook page. And you forgot to mention earlier his blog called I Am Naidu. And if you type in Wanderlust Naidus, you can possibly find on Google that way, since we have road trips that we put on there and explain more about cricket. And we'll be putting a in-depth. I had a journal that a friend sent me that was said Taj Mahal on it. And I wrote everything down after every night.
So while you go to wrap up here. So I Am Naidu on YouTube. I Am Naidu 007 on Instagram. I Am Naidu on Facebook, and Wanderlust Naidu on Big Site, which is the blog site. And we'll be happy to share any information regarding the green card process or the whole why to get married here first and there, and how to do the Indian ceremony, and how we basically manage our different cultural differences and embrace the differences rather than see them as roadblocks.
Perfect. I'm going to wait for Charis to come back so I can say goodbye to you guys.
Yeah, we should be here in a minute.
Oh,
Mark is loving me.
so cute. I can barely see him because it's so dark.
Yeah, he's all black. So that's the new Naidu, Loki Naidu.
Yeah.
Okay.
Little man.
All of you listeners who are watching the video, you can see their little puppy that they just got. So I will definitely put the link to all of your contact information in the show notes so people can check it out there. And thank you again so much for being here and chatting with me and sharing all of this amazing experience.
Thank you very much, Edith. It was a pleasure
us.
sharing and reliving all our moments, and I hope your channel grows and you get more interesting people, more interesting stories, and more beautiful intercultural couples on your show, and continue to grow. And all other listeners, kindly subscribe to our YouTube and Instagram as well. And we have a lot of interesting
Definitely. Thank you so much. Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.